June 24th, 2013, to talk about 1984. And I was looking at the music that came out in 84, and there's just one hit after another. There's just so much. Didn't realize there's so much music that came out in 84. So I'll play a song at the end here. One of our local boys, Prince. Prince was very popular. He released and did a movie and was just really on the top. So he came out at number one. I almost did the Tina Turner one, What's Love Got to Do with It. She had a really good, strong comeback that year and did very well. She came in at number two. But I was thinking of how close sometimes you can get really close to. I want to say is that fork in the road, that if you make this decision, life would have been altogether different. Or if you make this decision, just it's weird how you can look back, hindsight as they put it, and things could have been altogether different. But 84. This was after Gordon had both the optical and hearing, and it had started to decline. There's another optical place that moved in town, Wilmer there, and started to undersell us and took away a lot of the business. And he just didn't have the time and effort to stick with it. Plus, one of the gals that he hired was from the competition, and she kind of really drove up our prices real high, and it really hurt. We lost a lot of business. Looking back again on hindsight, so we had to move out of the professional building. The optical and hearing was in a professional building on the main street there in Wilmer, and so he let the optical go. And we moved the hearing into where we was living, residence there by the country club terrace. We lived in between the golf course and the lake, so it was a pretty affluent drive. So we put a big sign up there, and so that last year we was in that house. We had the hearing business there. In the meanwhile, what he was doing, he started doing, what do you call it, I want to say financial advisor. Had the word in my mouth earlier and lost it. But people would come to him, and then he would seek out investors. So he was kind of the middleman. So he would come and say, well, we need X amount for this. Usually there's just smaller independent business people, and then he would put out the feelers and see who would want to invest in that opportunity. And there's a word for it, broker, financial broker, and some of the, like one of the businesses I remember him looking at because I was curious, and he was showing me that one was like a woodworking business. They did, I think they must have made cabinets and different types of woodworking. It was a pretty big outfit that I remember. I thought but they needed some financial help, and then he put out the feelers, and he got some pretty good contacts eventually, because I knew he was on the phone a lot talking. But the one that sticks out in my mind was that there was a guy who had won a bid on one of the hotels there in Las Vegas. And this was way back before, like I said, this was 84. So this was way back before they started tearing down. There was a big rebuild. Vegas really ballooned out. So before, it had a really desolate downspurt. And this was just right at that point that he had won this guy in Minneapolis, and he had a pretty nice house. I remember we went by and talked to him there in Minnetonka, and he actually, what was the town? There's a little town in between, like Minnetonka and Edina and St. Louis Park, Hopkins. Real nice place in Hopkins because he had owned one of the restaurants there right down on Main Street in Hopkins. So he had given that up and then was ready to invest into another property. So he won this bid for one of the hotels there on the Strip, Vegas, but he didn't have the financing to seal the deal. Now, when Gordon put out the feelers, he got some pretty good kickback saying that, yes, he found this one guy that he said these my investors are interested in that property and is willing to back this man. So, he knows they found out that he's the one who's got a bid on this, that really put money into it. So everything was going pretty good. I remember we had to come in, because we was living like 100 miles from the city. So we had to come in a couple of times. First time to come in and meet with him and get his information, and then we were supposed to. The deadline was getting pretty close, and we were supposed to put. I know it was a lot of money. I don't know if it was like 13 or 17. $1,000 he was supposed to put down, and it was like he had to get the money. We had to take it to the airport and have a special delivery out, and we got. It seemed like we got all the way out to the airport, and this guy was willing to do it, but then he backed out. It's like he just really didn't feel comfortable with the investment. And so when he backed out, it was his money. So or let's see, what was it? Oh, that was it. Is that he had to put so much money down for the investors to put up the rest of the money. So he had to come up with like 10% of it. Or so. So he had to come up with like $2,000 or $3,000. That don't seem like very much, does it? Even for that time. But he had to come up with a pretty substantial amount to put down, so the other investors would put up the rest of the money. And then, like I said, he backed out. We went all the way to the airport. There's a special part of the airport that you can go in and they made special deliveries, packages and overnight type stuff there that you could take it strictly to the airport, and then it would get on the plane and be flown away. Then he backed out, and I remember that once we got back to Wilmer, he was talking to the guy that had set up the investors on that it didn't matter. I mean, he said you should have called me, because the investors would have put up the money themselves, because they were more interested in the property than this guy getting the property, because they figured, well, even if and they was counting on it, that if he defaulted, they would still end up with the property. But they knew that this guy had the bid, and they needed him to successfully make that bid to get it, and it was just fell apart and didn't work. And it was shortly after that we finally cut our ties there in Wilmer and packed up and went on our trip and ended up in Seattle. But it was just interesting that that last year that we was there in Wilmer, there was just a lot of things going on, and that was one of the things that was interesting and on pins and needles, and I know it was a very stressful time for Gordon. Like I said, losing the optical and still trying to make the hearing work and keeping up the house, because it was kind of a bid to buy or rent to buy. So it was just a lot of things went on, and he kept a lot of things from me because I was 22 at the time, so I wasn't really savvy enough to understand all of everything that was going on, and I just most likely had to follow his lead, and it came down to a point that his health was really getting affected by all the financial woes and worries, and I told him that this wasn't important. You are more important. Your health is more important than being a businessman, having businesses, having this house, because it was really a nice house by the golf course, by the lake. That has never been really important to me, and I told him if we have to give it up and move, and we did. So I think he took that, knowing that because he bought that house. So he said the whole thing of buying that house was to get me up here, because when I came up to visit that first time, we went looking for a house, and he showed me the house. He said, I'll buy this house, we move up. And he bought the house, and I moved up. So it was, he really hated to let the house go, because he knew that meant a lot to me. But at the same time, he meant more to me than the house did. So it was important to let him know that it's not material things. It's important in life. Important to me. It's you. You're here. You've proven yourself, and I knew at that point I had proven myself to him that I was in for the long term. So with that, we ventured off, went on our 10,000-mile trip around the country, and ended up in Seattle, and spent a couple of years out there, which was pretty interesting. I still think of that. I still think of all the places I'd like to live. If I ever moved away from Minnesota here, it would be back to the Northwest Territories there, because it's a beautiful, really beautiful country. The weather suits me better. There's just, we talk about God's country, and this is all God's country, wherever you are. We talk about it a lot here up in Minnesota. This is beautiful, and the lakes, but gorgeous mountains. It's about mountains and snow-covered tops. It's just deep woods. I'm definitely a deep woodsman. I've always liked the country, and always liked the country. But I'm a city boy, country boy. I think I've mentioned it before. City mouse meets country mouse. So which are you? A little bit of both. But here's 1984, Prince, and Doves Cry, and again, number one. There was a lot of hits in '84. I'm going to have to put a cap on that a few times, because I was reading through there and it's like, yes, I remember. So '84, Prince, Minneapolis Boy, right here, Minneapolis Boy, June 24th, 2013.